was born in 1977 in Calcutta, or Kolkata as it is, called now. And I, spent most of my life there. And for graduate school, I went to Delhi. And after that, I came to United States in 2003. So I was the only child, like, many of my friends of the generation. And a lot of times, I would just read. So I actually kind of grew up reading a lot of like Soviet folk tales, like Vasilisa and Baba Yaga and, the other many other, folk tales. And the funny thing is that I don't even remember when I first encountered them because it just seems that they were always there. My mom had this book called Aelita, and that was by, I think, Alexei Tolstoy, and it was translated into Bengali. And I just kind of, read it. It was definitely not meant for children. But I found it to be extremely romantic because it starts out with this lovelorn, engineer who's mourning his wife who's just died, and he wants to go to Mars because he wants to just kind of escape it at all, and then he, partners with an engineer, and they fly to Mars, and they meet some blue princess there called Aelita, and they fall in love. And they also start a Bolshevik revolution in Mars. Now, even though this whole plot seems so ridiculous now, but when I was reading, you have to understand, I was like just hitting my puberty, of this kind of romantic, longing, and the whole idea, the Bolshevik revolution, most romantic thing ever, with, this young man and this princess. It was like so romantic that I would keep on reading it, back and back. And actually, when I turned 13, I started writing, personal, diary. And I also read, like Anna Frank's diary. And I knew that Anna Frank would use, like a name for her diary. So I used to write my diary, starting with Dear Aelita, right? I mean, that was such a profound influence, on me. When you were young, and you kind of always kind of dreamily think, oh, who's my, like who will be my lover, one day, like who's my soulmate? And I should imagine that maybe my soulmate is in another place, maybe he's in, another planet, I don't know. So I just have this kind of, imagination that, so it kind of influenced me.
Right now I live in Linwood, Seattle, of course. Moved when I got married. My husband came for his PhD program in WSU. That was 1996. I'm from originally Bangladesh. Right now working as referral coordinator in Overlake Hospital. I grew up in a small town. It's a suburban town. Very comfy environment, like everybody used to know each other. The first book I got introduced to was gifted on my birthday, I remember. Probably I'm in kindergarten. So my parents on my birthday got me some wrapped up storybook. That was the best gift of my life, I still can remember. And they knew that I loved to read. So I guess that's how it started, my passion or my, interest or love to read or, getting into the literature. And then when I kind of was growing up, around my 4th, 5th grade, I would say, there was a mentor kind of, like a big brother kind. His name was Sharif Bhai. We used to call him. He was back then, he was a student, Dhaka University student in political science. But he used to work with the kids. Back home, we had 2 big group for kids organization. One is called Kalaghar. The meaning is playhouse. And we were part of it. And he started that group in that city. And the motto or the intention was to divert the kids towards reading, towards knowing, towards communicating with each other so they can know about life, they can make their own decision knowing what they're doing, to become more thoughtful and to divert towards the goodness. So he had big impact in my life. And about the literature or the Soviet literature that we are about to talk about, he was the first who introduced me with it. The next book I remember reading is the Gorky's mother, in Bengali, of course. It was called Ma. And that book, when I started reading it, when I read it, I didn't get much into it. It felt so hard to me to understand what's going on in there. And then I started rereading it. After 4 or 5 times, that book kind of did a spell on me. The mom at that time, Pavel's mom, she became an idyllic model for me. How the mom, being from that closed mind person, then literally gradually moving towards an open light and seeing things, how she can also make difference in people's life that she has been seeing being exploited. So that's the idea that kind of grounded into me at that time, that she's a woman and she's struggling herself, and from that she reveals her other identity, that she can become the strength. So I used to imagine that, how it would be if I could make a difference in people's life like that. Yeah, my concept, my thinking, how I look at life, that changed from those readings.
I'm a physician, I'm a pathologist. I work at University of Washington. The Soviet books came in my life as mainly as entertainment and really colorful and not philosophy in the first hand. When I was of about age 3 years, this was my first Soviet book that I grew up, a pop-up book, in a very small town, remote town in Maharashtra, at a price that the lower middle class or middle class families could afford. And then it just went on, and I ended up reading one of the most favorite book, Chuk and Gek, but I read it in Marathi as Don Bhau. That means 2 brothers. So it's about a telegram and how these 2 kids mess up with this telegram. They end up having a very, very long journey through Trans-Siberian train from Taiga to Siberia with their mother. So that is one of the most cherished and most loved book for me. The small sentences in that book, and they are not direct preaching philosophy, but they start like this. Like, for example, there lived a man who worked very hard, but he still couldn't finish his work. So it reminds, and this is the description for the father of these kids, and it reminded me, like my father, there lived a man in some remote town somewhere who works very hard. Even in the middle of the night, he goes and attends patient calls. He could never finish his work, and but he loved his children and his family. So it's very pretty much not preaching, but very resonating to my life story and philosophy and the way I love adventures and take life full head on. I moved from places to places is my journey so far, and in that journey I lost my original copy, which used to be like how a lot of people carried Bhagavad Gita with them, Indian people. I used to carry that copy so closely to me. So I found Chuk and Gek as an e-copy, and I have that e-copy on my laptop, and I have taken a lot of images from that book. I read it to my kids. So I really feel that this is a book and this is a story that has really traveled not only through that Trans-Siberian train where this kid took, but through centuries, because from 1931, something that withholds and keeps its strength even in 2016 is remarkable. So for me at that time, I never had all these other political connotations in those growing up years, where people called it like, oh, is it Soviet propaganda? Is it part of this and that? And even if it was, I don't care at this point. It gave me the right values in my growing up years, which matters the most.